Parents always favored my sister. They said, "We want you to be more like her." When I went to an art school and she went to an Ivy League, our parents were thrilled about her choice but skeptical about mine, asking if I was sure I could make a living as an artist. One day, I stormed up to my room and packed my belongings. A year later, my illustration career has really taken off. My mom reached out to me and found out my golden child sister was fired from her job. I, 25, have always been the black sheep of my family. My older sister, Emma, 28, has been a golden child for as long as I can remember. Our parents, especially our mom, have always favored her over me. It's been this way since we were kids, and it's only gotten worse as we've grown older. Growing up, Emma was always the star student, the popular girl, and the one who seemed to excel at everything she tried. She was captain of the cheerleading squad that straight A's and was even voted prom queen. Meanwhile, I struggled with school, had a small group of friends, and preferred spending time in the art room rather than at social events. Our parents never missed a chance to compare us. "Why can't you be more like Emma?" was a phrase I heard all too often. They praised her accomplishments endlessly while barely acknowledging mine. When I got to be on a test, they'd ask why it wasn't an AA. When Emma got an AA, they throw a celebration dinner. This pattern continued into our adult lives. Emma went to an Ivy League college on a scholarship while I chose a state school to study art. Our parents were thrilled about Emma's choice, but skeptical about mine. They constantly questioned my decision, asking if I was sure I could make a living as an artist. I remember the day I told them about my college choice. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I had spent weeks gathering courage to share my decision. When I finally told them, my dad's face fell, and my mom looked like she might cry. Emma, of course, chimed in with, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Art school isn't exactly known for job security. My parents nodded in agreement, and I felt my dreams crumbling before my eyes. Despite their disapproval, I stuck to my decision. Those 4 years in college were some of the best of my life. I finally felt like I belonged somewhere surrounded by people who understood and appreciated creativity. I thrived in my classes, even making the dean's list several times. But whenever I shared these achievements with my family, they were met with lukewarm responses. "That's nice, dear," my mom would say, before quickly changing the subject to Emma's latest accomplishment. After college, Emma landed a high-paying job at a prestigious law firm in the city. I, on the other hand, struggled to find my footing. I worked various part-time jobs while trying to establish myself as a freelance illustrator. Our parents were always eager to hear about Emma's latest case of a promotion, but they changed the subject when I tried to talk about my art projects. I remember one particularly painful family dinner about 6 months after graduation. Emma was visiting from the city, and our parents had prepared her favorite meal. The entire conversation revolved around her recent win in court. My mom kept saying how proud she was, and my dad couldn't stop grinning. When I tried to share about a small illustration job I had landed for a local magazine, my mom cut me off mid-sentence to ask Emma about her plans for buying an apartment. The situation at home became unbearable. I was still living with our parents to save money, but the constant comparisons and subtle put-downs were taking a toll on my mental health. Emma had her own apartment in the city paid for by her parents. Of course, every time she visited, it was like a royal arrival. Our parents would spend days preparing, cleaning the house and cooking her favorite meals. When she walked in the door, they greet her with hugs and excited chatter. My presence, on the other hand, often felt like an afterthought. I tried to talk to them about how I felt several times, but it never went well. They'd accuse me of being jealous of Emma's success or tell me I was being too sensitive. "We just want what's best for you," they'd say, which always felt like code for, "We want you to be more like Emma." The constant comparisons affected every aspect of my life. I started doubting my choices, my abilities, and even my worth as a person. There were days when I could barely get out of bed, overwhelmed by feelings of inadequacy and failure. I began to withdraw from my friends, embarrassed by my lack of success compared to my sister. Even my love life wasn't safe from their criticism. When I brought home my first serious boyfriend in college, an art student like me, my parents were less than impressed. They spent the entire dinner grilling him about his career prospects and making thinly veiled comments about the instability of artistic careers. Meanwhile, when Emma brought home her boyfriend, a law student from a wealthy family, my parents practically rolled out the red carpet. Things came to a head last week. I had finally landed a significant illustration project for a children's book series. It wasn't a huge paycheck, but it was a step in the right direction for my career. I was excited to share the news with my family at dinner. As usual, the conversation revolved around Emma's latest achievements. She had just won a big case at work and was being considered for a promotion. Our parents couldn't stop gushing about how proud they were when there was finally a lull in the conversation. I took my chance. I told them about my illustration project, trying to contain my excitement. My mom's response: "That's nice, dear, but don't you think it's time you got a real job? You're not getting any younger, you know." My dad just nodded in agreement. I was crushed. I tried to explain that this was a real job, that it could lead to more opportunities in the future, but they weren't listening. Emma, in saying she could probably get me an entry-level position at her law firm if I wanted to. Stable career. That was the last straw. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. I told them I was tired of being treated like a disappointment, that I was proud of my work and my choices. I said I couldn't stay in a house where I was constantly made to feel inferior. My parents looked shocked. My mom started to say something about how I was being overly sensitive when I cut her off. I told them I was moving out, that I'd rather struggle on my own than live with their constant disapproval. Emma tried to play peacemaker, telling me to calm down and not make rash decisions, but I could see the smug look in her eyes. She was enjoying this, enjoying being the perfect daughter while I was the family disappointment. I stormed up to my room and started packing. No comment. Update to take you on part 2. I stormed up to my room and started packing. My parents and Emma followed, trying to talk me out of that, but their words only confirmed what I already knew. They saw me as a failure, a burden. My mom even had the audacity to say, "If you leave now, don't expect us to help you when you can't make rent." As I was throwing clothes into a suitcase, memories flooded my mind. There was a time I went to local art competition in high school, and my parents didn't even come to the award ceremony because it clashed with one of Emma's debate tournaments. There were countless times they'd introduced Emma as our daughter. The lawyer in me is just our other daughter. I could still see the look of disappointment on their faces when I chose art school over the business program they wanted me to attend. That night, I left with whatever I could fit in my car. As I drove away, I saw my parents and Emma standing in the doorway. My mom was crying. My dad looked angry. And Emma just looked smug. I felt a mix of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, but also a strange sense of relief. I'm currently staying with a friend, trying to figure out my next move. I know leaving was drastic, but I couldn't take it anymore. Am I overreacting? Should I have stayed and tried to make them understand? Or was leaving the right choice? I feel lost and alone, but also somewhat relieved to be out of that toxic environment. The thought of building a life on my own terms is both exciting and terrifying. I'm scared about how I'll manage financially, but I'm also looking forward to pursuing my art without constant criticism and comparisons. Any advice or support would be appreciated. How do I move forward from here? How do I build a life for myself while dealing with the emotional fallout of leaving my family? And most importantly, how do I start believing in myself after years of being made to feel like I'm not good enough? Update 1. It's been about 2 months since I left my parents' house, and a lot has happened. I wanted to update you all and thank you for your support and advice. Your kind words and encouragement have been a lifeline during this challenging time. After I left, I spent a week crashing on my friend's couch while I looked for a more permanent solution. It was tough, but I managed to find a tiny studio apartment that I could just barely afford with my savings and the income from my illustration project. It's not much, but it's mine, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I have my own space. The first few weeks were hard. I threw myself into my work, determined to prove to myself, and maybe to my family, that I could make it on my own. I picked up a part-time job at a local coffee shop to supplement my income from illustration work between the two jobs. I was working almost constantly, but it felt good to be self-sufficient. There were nights when I come home exhausted, my hands aching from hours of drawing and making lattes, and I wonder if I made the right choice. The little voice in my head, which sounded suspiciously like my mother, would whisper that I was foolish for thinking I could make it as an artist. But then I'd look at the illustrations I was creating and remember why I chose this path. My parents tried to contact me several times, but I wasn't ready to talk to them. I needed time to process everything and focus on standing on my own. 2 feet. Their voicemails ranged from angry demands that I come home to tearful pleas asking if I was okay. It was hard to ignore them, but I knew I needed space to figure things out for myself. Emma called a few times, to always with the same patronizing tone, telling me I was being childish and then I should come home and apologize. Her words stung, but they also strengthened my resolve to succeed on my own terms. About a month after I left, something unexpected happened. The children's book I had illustrated was published, and it started gaining traction. The author shared it on social media, and it caught the attention of a few influential parenting bloggers. Suddenly, I was getting emails from publishers interested in my work. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment staring at my computer screen in disbelief as the emails came in. For the first time, I felt like my dreams weren't just pipe dreams. I cried that night, but they were tears of joy and relief. I landed 2 more book deals in quick succession. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough that I could quit my coffee shop job and focus on illustration full-time for the first time. I felt like my career was taking off. With this newfound success came a boost in confidence. I started believing in myself and my abilities in a way I never had before. I realized that I didn't need my family's approval to validate my choices that were my worth. Around this time, Emma showed up at my apartment unannounced. She said she was worried about me and that our parents were upset. I invited her in more out of politeness than anything else. At first, she seemed genuinely interested in how I was doing. She looked around my tiny apartment and asked about my work. I showed her the published book and told her about the new projects. For a moment, I thought maybe she was finally seeing me as an equal. But then she started in on the same old rhetoric. She said that while it was nice that I had some success, it wasn't a stable career. She talked about how worried our parents were and how they just wanted what was best for me. She even suggested again that she could get me a job in her law firm. As she spoke, I felt a familiar feeling of inadequacy creeping in, but this time something was different. I looked at my work spread out on my desk, thought about the emails from publishers in my inbox, and I felt a surge of pride. I lost my temper. I told her that I was doing fine, that I was happier than I'd ever been. I pointed out that for the first time, I was supporting myself entirely on my own work without any help from our parents. I asked her if she could say the same, considering our parents were still paying for her apartment. Emma's face changed. The mask of concern dropped, and I saw the same smug, superior expression I'd seen the night I left. She snapped at me, saying I was ungrateful and selfish. She said I was breaking our parents' hearts and that I should be ashamed of myself. I asked her to leave as she was going. She turned and said, "Don't come crying to us when this little art phase of yours fails. We won't be there to bail you out." After she left, I felt shaken but also strangely empowered. I realized that I didn't need their approval anymore. I was making it on my own, doing what I loved, and that was enough. The encounter with Emma made me reflect on our relationship over the years. I remembered how close we were as kids before the competition and comparisons to us apart. I felt a pang of sadness for the sisterhood we'd lost, but I also realized that I couldn't keep holding on to that idealized version of our relationship. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor. I started reaching out to other artists and illustrators, building a network of like-minded creatives. For the first time, I felt like I was part of a community that understood and valued me. I also started therapy to work through the years of emotional. It's been almost a year since my last update, and I can hardly believe how much has changed. I want to share what's happened and thank you all again for your continued support throughout this journey. My illustration career has really taken off. The children's book series I worked on became quite popular, and I've since illustrated several more books. I've also started taking on commissions for magazine covers and even a few advertising campaigns. It's been a lot of work, but I'm loving every minute of it. About 6 months ago, I moved into a larger apartment. It's still not huge, but it has enough space for a proper art studio. Being able to separate my work and living spaces has done wonders for my productivity and mental health. I remember the day I moved in, standing in the middle of my studio surrounded by blank canvases and the smell of fresh paint. I felt the sense of accomplishment and possibility that I had never experienced before. My confidence has grown along with my career. I've been invited to speak at a few local schools about careers in illustration, and I've even started mentoring a couple of young artists. It feels surreal to be in a position to inspire others when not too long ago I was questioning my own choices. Now on to the family drama. A few months after my last update, my mom called me out of the blue. She was crying and asked if we could meet. I was hesitant, but I agreed to meet her for coffee. My therapist had been encouraging me to set boundaries and work on healing my relationship with my family. So I saw this as an opportunity to start that process. When we met, she looked tired and upset. She started by apologizing for how they had treated me. She said that after I left, they had a lot of time to reflect on their behavior. She admitted that they had been unfair to me and that they regretted always comparing me to Emma. Her words were what I had longed to hear for years, but I found myself feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted to accept the apology and fall into her arms like a little girl. Another part of me was wary, wondering if this was just another attempt to get me to conform to their expectations. Then she dropped a bombshell. Emma had been fired from her job at the law firm. Apparently, she had been falsifying her billable hours and overcharging clients. The firm found out and terminated her immediately. I was shocked. The golden child, the perfect daughter, had fallen from grace. I felt the mix of emotions, surprise, a twisted sense of satisfaction, and oddly concerned for my sister. But that wasn't all. Emma had been living well beyond her means, relying on her parents to subsidize her lifestyle. When she lost her job, she couldn't keep up with her expenses. She had racked up a huge amount of credit card debt and was facing eviction from her apartment. My parents had been trying to help her, but the situation was dire. They had already spent a significant portion of their savings trying to keep them afloat. My mom broke down as she told me this, saying they felt betrayed and didn't know what to do. As I listened to my mom, I realized how much pressure Emma must have been under all these years, always having to be perfect, always having to live up to our parents' expectations in a way. I felt sorry for her. My mom asked if I would consider coming home for dinner to talk things through as a family. I was conflicted, but I agreed. I felt I was in a stronger place emotionally and could handle it now. The family dinner was tense. Emma was there looking nothing like the polished, confident person I remembered. She was defensive and angry, lashing out at everyone. She accused our parents of not supporting her enough and me of abandoning the family. I stayed calm and stood my ground. I told them about my successes, about how I had built a career and a life for myself without their help. Our parents listened with a mix of pride and regret on their faces. Emma stormed out halfway through dinner. After she left, my parents broke down. They apologized again for how they had treated me and said they were proud of what I had accomplished. They asked if I would consider moving back home. I told them I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't interested in moving back. I had built a life for myself and I was happy with it. However, I said I was open to working on our relationship and spending more time together. Since then, things have been slowly improving. My parents and I talk regularly now, and they've even come to visit my new apartment. They ask about my work and seem genuinely interested. It's a strange feeling having them actually listen to me and show pride in my accomplishments. Emma, on the other hand, has cut off contact with all of us. Last I heard, she had moved to another city to start over. I tried reaching out to her a few times, but she hasn't responded. I hope she's doing okay and that she can find her own path free from the pressure of being the perfect child. This whole experience has taught me a lot about family dynamics, self-worth, and the importance of following your own path. I've learned that success isn't about living up to someone else's expectations, but about being true to yourself and doing what makes you happy. I've also learned the value of forgiveness. It hasn't been easy, but I'm working on forgiving my parents and Emma, not for their sake, but for my own peace of mind. I realize that holding on to anger and resentment only hurts me in the long run. My relationship with my parents is still a work in progress. There are moments when old patterns emerge, and I have to remind them and myself that things are different now, but overall we're moving in a positive direction. They're learning to appreciate me for who I am, not who they wanted me to be. As for my career, it continues to flourish. I've recently been approached about illustrating a graphic novel, which is a dream come true. I'm also considering teaching a course at a local community college, sharing my skills and experiences with others who are passionate about art. Looking back on the past year, I'm amazed at how much has changed. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I had made the right choice in leaving, but now I know it was the best decision I could have made. It forced me to stand on my own 2 feet, to believe in myself when no one else did. To anyone out there facing similar family issues, hang in there. Stand up for yourself. Pursue your passions, and don't let anyone make you feel less than you are. You never know how things might turn out. Success and happiness can come in many forms, and sometimes the path to finding them isn't the one others have chosen for you. Family dynamics can be complicated, and healing takes time. Be patient with yourself and with others. Set boundaries when needed, but also be open to reconciliation if it feels right. Remember that you have value regardless of your family's approval or anyone else's expectations. I'm grateful for this community and the support you've shown me throughout this journey. Your encouragement has meant more than you know. Thank you for being there during the tough times and celebrating the victories with me as I look to the future. I'm excited about what's to come. I feel like I'm finally living life on my own terms, pursuing my passions and building meaningful relationships. It's not always easy, but it's genuine and fulfilling in a way I never experienced before. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. It's meant the world to me. Here's to following our dreams, healing old wounds, and creating the life we want to live. Now it's like our stories. Follow us for more. Story 2. 12 unread messages and 3 missed calls. Different day, same pattern. I recognized the person already. Emma, my sister, most likely had another pressing issue that required my money in some way. As I stared at the spreadsheet on my computer and scratched my temples, my phone buzzed once again. A moment passed before the figures were clear again. Marketing reports, and client deadlines. But all I could think of was how I had spent the last 3 years bearing the hardships of my family. It began when Dad, or James, as I had come to think of him, lost his job temporarily. "Ryan, we'll be back on our feet shortly," he had added. However, it ended up being 3 arduous years. In order to save them from losing the house, I paid their mortgage $1,200 a month. When Evans was between jobs, I paid his rent, which, let's face it, was a pretext for him to play video games in his flat. Emma, too. When she required money for her children's school supplies, she referred to it as borrowing. However, borrowing requires repayment. At first, I didn't mind assisting. Isn't family a cohesive unit? I continued telling myself that despite the fact that I ate instant noodles more frequently than any mature man, should postpone purchasing a home and skipped vacations. They will be grateful. They love me. I reminded myself, but love shouldn't feel this way. Nevertheless, the transactions were sent out on a monthly basis, just like clockwork. I served as their lifeline and safety net. However, what did I receive in exchange? Father Ryan left a voicemail. The move is still pending. Your mother is concerned about the expenses. Emma texted. Could you perhaps send an additional $300? Evan is once more in jeopardy. The worst part was that they didn't even realize that I was drowning. I was completely unaware of how much of myself I had sacrificed. Not until the morning of that Tuesday when everything was different. Have you seen this OMG? I paused at the subject line alone. It came from my cousin Michael. I nearly forgot to open it. Another diversion, as my workload was overwhelming me. But I clicked for some reason. Curiosity, perhaps. Or perhaps I was simply seeking an excuse to put things off. In any case, I was unaware that a mere 43 seconds of video would have a profound impact. I tapped my pen on my desk while I waited for the file to load on the office Wi-Fi. When the film of my parents' living room Christmas eventually came on, I was in the middle of another cup of coffee. The same decorations we'd had since I was a child, the same dazzling lights. Off-camera laughter could be heard. When I recognized it as the Christmas gathering from the previous year, my gut tightened, the one I missed due to an urgent work-related matter. In order to complete a project that would guarantee my promotion, I stayed late at work. More cash to maintain their standard of living. It was worth it, I'd convinced myself. Then Emma's voice came to me. I'm glad Ryan was unable to attend. In fact, we can now have fun. What I went cold. My tummy is getting chilled from the coffee's warmth. These days, he's so stiff. She went on, her voice brimming with annoyance, constantly discussing work as if his marketing tactics were important to us. There was laughter. Then Evan added his voice. I'm okay with it as long as the money keeps pouring in. He held his glass up to our very own ATM Ryan. Our own ATM. More loud than the laughing, the words reverberated in my head. Grace, my mother, then said. She said in a quieter but equally terrible voice, I can tolerate his rudeness because his posh job is paying for this Christmas meal. James, another round of laughs. The last dagger was added by my dad. To Ryan, cheers, keeping us afloat so that we are spared the trouble. To them, I was only a walking, talking money account, and they drank to me my sacrifices and that reality. It wasn't until my coffee spilt over my desk that I noticed my hands were shaking. With my heart thumping in my ears, I slammed the cup down. Michael didn't say much. I'm so sorry. To illustrate what I've been going through in this household, I intended to submit this to my therapist. Give me a call, please. I was unable to phone him, though. I was unable to talk. I just made it to the workplace loo before I puked due to a stomach lurch. The coffee tasted better than the taste of betrayal. Consequences of realization. Those phrase, our personal ATM, followed me around all day, attending consecutive meetings while nodding appropriately. I felt remote from my coworkers whose laughter was muted by the ringing in my ears while I was pretending everything was all right on the inside. I kept playing the video over and over in my head, hoping I had misheard, but the words remained the same. The joy on their cheeks as they drank and reveled at my expense didn't either. $95,000 over 3 years. I had given them that much. Mortgage, installments, Evan's rent, Emma's children's school supplies, many emergency costs. I could have used that money to pursue my own goals, a home I'd always desired, a master's degree. I continued putting off a trip that I hadn't done for years. For them, I gave up everything. They gave their golden goose a toast in return. Pain is replaced by anger. As I arrived to my house, I was no longer depressed. I was enraged. I walked around my little flat, which suddenly seemed constricting. I examined the faded paint on the walls, the shabby furnishings, and the used dishes. They made fun of me for delaying my own life in order to provide for their comfort. I reached for my phone and started going through all of the texts that Emma, Evan, James, and Grace had sent me. Requests. They had never inquired about my well-being. Then it dawned on me. They didn't give a damn. Family was never the focus. What I could do for them was the main concern. I had finished serving as their safety net. I spent a lot of time staring at my phone, my thumb resting on the most recent text message from my mother. "Ryan, you need to replenish your dad's prescription. The transfer is where..." For the first time in my life, I didn't respond. I hung up the phone and left it on voicemail. For the first time in years, I felt empty when I woke up the next morning. I didn't look at my phone right away. The standard line of, "Hey Ryan, can you send messages? Our personal ATM doesn't need to be seen." As I gazed at the ceiling, the morning light barely peeking through the blinds, the words replayed in my head. For a very long time, I had felt that caring for my family was my obligation and an unwritten agreement that I had voluntarily made. Contracts may be broken, and their laughing had already ripped mine to pieces. I forced myself to get out of bed and performed the rituals: shower, make coffee, and put on clothes. However, I felt as though I was operating on autopilot and everything was mechanical. I gulped down the coffee like harsh medication without even tasting it. I still hadn't viewed any of the missed messages by midday. 23 calls were not returned. The same individuals who drank to my sacrifices sent me 38 unopened SMS. However, I wasn't prepared to confront them. Not quite yet. Instead, I did something I had been avoiding for months. I faced the figures. In order to get James and Grace mortgage assistance, I accessed my banking app and paid $1 to $200 every month. Evan receives temporary rent assistance of $800 per month. Bro only till I'm back on my feet. Emma receives $500 each month for her children's extracurricular activities and school supplies. Then there were pleas for emergencies, medical expenses, birthday presents, and auto maintenance. My jaw tensed with each swipe as I went through the transactions. $95,000. I had given them that much in the last 3 years. Almost 6 figures that I could have used for master's degree tuition or as a down payment on my ideal home. Or worse, simply a well-earned getaway, following years of 60-hour labor weeks. Rather, it had financed their way of life. For what purpose? Being made fun of behind my back. Belittled to an ATM. Not anymore. As I composed an email to my bank subject, my hands felt stable. Terminate reoccurring transfers. The choice that altered everything. With my finger lingering over the submit button, the first one gazed at the screen for a while. My brain begged me to hold off on giving them another opportunity. However, my heart had already given up. Not anymore. As though speaking it out loud would make it happen, I whispered. I then clicked send. A notice appeared. Transfers were canceled. It seemed nearly immediate when the weight dropped off my chest, as if I had been carrying a boulder for years and it had finally rolled off. The consequences start to occur. Before I could fully comprehend the relief, my phone began to vibrate once more. I left it on voicemail: Mom, and then Emma, next Evan, next Dad. 23 calls were not returned. They weren't giving up, but I chose to ignore them all. I received text after SMS on my phone. Emma: Ryan, hello. I saw that the transfer was unsuccessful. Is everything all right? Evan: Hey dude. They're breathing down my neck, my landlord. I urgently need the money. James: This isn't funny, Ryan. Your mother is really anxious. Give us a call. Mom's message, however, was the twist in the tale. Grace: Ryan, your father needs his prescription for high blood pressure. You are responsible if something were to happen to him. Shame. They were fully aware of which threads to tug. I wouldn't have given in like I used to. My chest constricted with a familiar sense of unease as I gazed at the letter. I was in danger of collapsing beneath the weight of the duty I had carried for so long. Not this time, though. I inhaled deeply, making myself recall the video, their toasts, their laughter, and their total indifference to everything I had given up. They had no concern for me. They feared they would lose their ATM. My jaw tightened as I typed a reply. Me. This month, there will be no transfers. I need to take care of some personal financial issues. Before I could doubt myself, I had seen. The answer was immediate. Ryan Grace, this is unfair. The health of your father is in jeopardy. Evan, really, dude, I'm going to be kicked out. Emma, the children require new school attire. Please. Ryan. The guilt was oppressive. However, when they laughed, I realized they weren't concerned about me. When I worked on the weekends to keep them comfortable, they didn't care. For the first time in years, I switched off my phone. I found peace in the chaos by choosing to be silent. I poured myself a glass of wine that evening. Since I couldn't defend spending money on myself when they needed it more, I sat by the window of my small flat where I had lived for all these years. However, the ATM was now closed, and I felt liberated for the first time in my memory. No more obligations, no more guilt, and no more self-sacrificing for those who viewed me as nothing more than a paycheck. I smiled as I took a sip and allowed the warmth of the wine to wash over me. I was done, so let them figure it out. Then desperation sets in. I felt lighter when I woke up the following morning. I prepared a good breakfast, took a long shower, and even went for a walk to a nearby cafe to get some fresh air. I wasn't shocked to see even more missed calls and texts when I finally checked my phone. However, I was drawn to one. I'm coming over, Emma. We must speak. Fantastic. I was prepared for this confrontation, even though I knew it was inevitable. Even before she buzzed the intercom, I knew she was approaching. It wasn't to question Emma, the text she sent earlier. It was a declaration. I'll be over. We must speak. No. Can we talk, or is this a good time? Typical Emma. I stood at the door, my pulse hammering as I waited for the inevitable knock, and precisely on cue. Bang bang, Ryan. Open up. I took a long breath, letting it out slowly as I ran my hand through my hair. Part of me wanted to ignore her to pretend I wasn't home and let her stew. But I knew Emma. She wouldn't leave. She'd keep banging, maybe even get the neighbors involved. Better to get things over with. I opened the door. The encounter. Emma stood there, her arms crossed her face, a carefully managed blend of concern and fury. She appeared worn out, but not in the way that comes from bearing other people's burdens. No, it was the weariness of someone who was just beginning to realize that the gravy train had come to a halt. Before I could invite her inside, she pushed by me and shouted, "Ryan, we must speak." I shut the door behind me and looked at her. I assumed she walked about my tiny flat. She looked about this room as though she had never actually looked at it before. She kept looking at the peeling paint, the mismatched pieces of furniture, and the barely stable secondhand bookcase. She made hazy gestures around the room to indicate this. Do you reside here? I arched an eyebrow. Emma, where did you suppose I lived? A penthouse. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I could see the wheels spinning in her mind as she attempted to balance the reality of my little one-bedroom flat with the picture of her successful, well-paid brother. With a last sigh, she fell down on the shabby couch. What's going on, Ryan? I didn't sit for guilt, manipulation, and the same old tricks. I kept a safe distance from him by leaning against the counter. What's happening? My voice resonated, forceful but calm. Why did I cease giving money, do you mean? She glanced up into my eyes. You cannot simply cut us off in this manner. The guilt trip was the same as before. Dad has to take his medicine. Her voice grew softer as she said, Evan's landlord is threatening to evict Evans while playing the worried daughter card. My arms were crossed over my chest. Emma, you know what's funny? I have been giving money for 3 years. Not a single penny was spent on your child's school supplies. Evan's rent or Dad's prescription drugs. Not once. Has anybody inquired about my well-being? None of you ever gave a damn about how I was going. She blushed. It's unfair. Just, there was no humor in my laughter. Emma, you gave me a Christmas toast. Being your personal ATM, in my opinion. Her gaze expanded. You. Did you see that I gave a nod? I tightened my jaw. Yes, I got the video from Michael. A minute of silence. I believed I caught a glimpse of shame in her eyes. However, it vanished in an instant. The same old entitlement has taken its place. She continued, "Ryan," in a gentler, almost beseeching tone. "It wasn't our intention. After a few drinks, do you realize what we become?" "We were only kidding. Are you kidding?" I gritted my teeth, suppressing the rage that erupted. Emma jokes are meant to be humorous. It wasn't amusing. It was embarrassing. Her fingers anxiously picked at the hem of her jumper as she turned her head away. "Look, I understand that we made a mistake. We are family, though. We look out for one another." "Do we?" From where I'm standing, it appears like I was the only one taking care of myself, so I inquired in a hushed voice. She could have spoken, but her silence spoke more. And I didn't feel bad for the first time. I had been putting their demands ahead of my own for so long that I had forgotten what it was like to put my own pleasure and ambitions first. I was not going back now that I had experienced that freedom. "Emma," I replied quietly but firmly, "I can't do it anymore. I can't continue to give up my aspirations and my life so you can live comfortably. It's unfair. And I'm finished." She started crying. "What are we going to do, Ryan?" I let out a sigh. Before I let it go, the burden of years of guilt and expectations pressed down one final time, just like I had to figure it out. She was about to argue when she noticed something in my eyes. She sensed that this was not a negotiation. This was a limit. "All right," she muttered. Her voice could hardly be heard. "All right, Ryan, discovering my true self." I thought I would feel empty after Emma left, but for the first time in years, I felt lighter. I wasn't burdened by the weight of their expectations. And that liberty, it was euphoric. During the ensuing weeks, I took a revolutionary action. I began to live for myself. I enrolled in the photography course I had always discussed, but had never had the funds or time for. Every time I clicked the shutter, I felt more alive as I spent my weekends at the beach photographing sunsets and waves. Even real estate listings caught my attention. Now for a home that was mine, my dreams, my future, my life, but also one that was large enough to accommodate family get-togethers. And it felt possible for the first time. Gaining the ability to let go. Of course, occasionally the guilt still surfaced. Conditioning over many years. Don't vanish in a flash. However, I always reminded myself of the video of their laughter and how little they valued me beyond what I could do for them whenever I experienced that familiar pain. I trusted them because they had proven themselves to me. I wasn't totally cutting them off. Even so, I gave Emma's children birthday presents. Even though I kept our conversations short, I responded to Mom's occasional texts, but I wasn't there at the time. A taste of real freedom. I scheduled my first actual trip in years in Hawaii 3 months after I canceled the transfers. The beach was warm, and I was standing on it. My spirit was calmed by the sound of the waves in ways I was unaware I needed. For the first time in a long time, I felt calm as I inhaled deeply and allowed the salty air to fill my lungs. Due to this was the way life was meant to be. Hawaii had met all of my needs, and then some, in years for the first time. I didn't have any urgent demands, deadlines, or late-night texts for money. I was alone, my camera, and the seemingly whispering expanse of ocean. At last, you are free. However, the strange thing about independence is that it forces you to face things you've been avoiding. The stillness was different when I got home. It wasn't the type that used to make me feel heavy, making me feel isolated. Until I looked at my mail, this quiet seemed serene. An old letter. "Ryan, read this, please." It was a familiar handwriting. Grace's. I held the envelope as if it were a ticking time bomb while I stood there. A part of me wanted to throw it in the garbage. However, curiosity. I couldn't because of that obstinate little voice in my brain. After putting my suitcase down, I sat down at the kitchen table and got myself a drink of water. I inhaled deeply before opening the mail. "Ryan, my darling. Ryan, my darling. Ryan." It started. My dearest, already different from the guilt-ridden truncated letters I had become accustomed to. For a long time, I've wanted to write this, but I wasn't sure where to start. I suppose I'll begin with the facts. With each sentence, my chest tightened as I blinked and looked over the sentences. We were mistaken. So gravely incorrect. For years, Ryan, we took you for granted, not just the night we made fun of you. Instead of treating your achievement as something you earned through hard effort, we viewed it as something to which we were entitled. And I really apologize for it. I had a constricted throat. Everything came apart when the money stopped. We were forced to confront things that we had been avoiding for years. Your dad, he needed his brother's assistance. When Evan was evicted, he returned home. Emma, too. Without your assistance, she is finding it difficult to meet the requirements of the children. But Ryan, it's not your fault. It wasn't. We ought not to have burdened you with it. My fingers gripped the page tightly. Over the past several months, I've had a lot of time to reflect, and I came to a realization. We never inquired about your needs or desires. We never bothered to inquire about your well-being. Son, I really apologize for that. I hope we can start over someday, but I know I can't undo the years of neglect. Not with cash or commitments, but with respect and affection. The letter concluded plainly. We're available whenever you're ready, but only if and when you're prepared, with remorse and love. Mom. Feelings I wasn't prepared for. His feelings, which I believed I had buried, were blurred in my vision as I gazed at the letter for a long time, came tumbling to the top. Anger, sadness, relief. I hope, however, hope may be hazardous. Too many years had passed since I had hoped they would view me as more than just a living pocketbook. And still this letter. For the first time, it felt different. There was just unadulterated honesty, neither guilt nor deception. An internal conflict. For the following several days, I tried to make sense of the confusion in my mind. There was a part of me that hoped they had finally changed, and that we could actually rebuild something. However, there was another half that didn't trust them. Perhaps that was acceptable. It takes time to build trust. I had forgotten what it was like to prioritize myself since I had been giving them everything for so long. And I wasn't prepared to part with that. Not quite yet. I wasn't prepared to burn the bridge entirely, though. It's my turn to talk. I took the time to write my own letter a week after receiving Grace's. The words flowed more naturally to me than I had anticipated, dear Mom. I appreciate your letter. I've read it several times and I value your candor. I'll admit that reading it was painful, but it also provided me with closure I wasn't aware I needed. After a brief period of hovering, I carried on for 3 years. I sacrificed everything to ensure the well-being of our family. I was made fun of and treated like an ATM in exchange for giving up my aspirations, comfort, and peace of mind. I won't act as though it's simple to forgive. I stopped and inhaled deeply. However, I am also aware that individuals may evolve, and I'm prepared to keep that door unlocked even if I'm not ready to open it completely again. I told the truth, brutally truthful. It must be different if we want to mend this connection. No more debt, no more responsibilities, only family. We might have a chance if you can accept it. I signed it with a feeling I hadn't had in a while. Ryan is letting go of the past with love and limits. The next morning, I sent the letter by mail. I didn't anticipate a response, not immediately, and because I was no longer waiting for approval, that was okay. I wasn't living for their approval for the first time in years. I wasn't putting their comfort ahead of my satisfaction. I was living for myself. A fresh chapter. The seasons shifted. There was new life in the spring, and with it, a side of myself that I was just now starting to realize. I spent more time outside shooting real feeling experiences with my camera. I enrolled in further photography lessons, connected with like-minded individuals, and even began organizing a photographic display. My work, not the one that provided for my family or paid other people's bills. The task that nourished my spirit. A house I really owned. Then I did something I never would have imagined doing on a Saturday morning. I entered a small, comfortable townhouse. It was simple but charming. A tiny garden in rear hardwood flooring and lots of natural light for my pictures. Mine. I signed the documents without thinking twice. I was creating anything for myself for the first time in my life. A new sort of relationship. I received an email from Grace a few weeks later. "Ryan, thank you for your letter. You have my admiration. No matter how long it takes, we will wait. Mom love." I took a while to respond. That wasn't what I was expecting. But perhaps someday, I'm moving in the direction of my future. I walked my dog through my new neighborhood that evening. The air had the scent of spring blossoms and the sky was tinted pink and orange by the lowering sun. There was calm here. This was liberty. I came to a realization as I stood there observing the horizon. Being loved shouldn't come at the expense of your personal health. Some partnerships are too expensive. But at last, I had the courage to delete the account. The second story. In the family, I had always been the one who could be relied upon. The stone. When my sister Emily needed me, I was the person who put everything else aside. Whether it was helping her move residences twice, going across town to console her after a breakup, or paying half her rent after she lost her job. Every time I was present. I thus thought the SMS was a prank when I received it. "Hello, I just wanted to let you know that we had to make some difficult cuts to the final guest list. I hope you get it. I adore you." Severe cuts. As though the words may suddenly rearrange themselves, I blinked at my laptop and read it again. I wasn't an old family acquaintance they hadn't seen in years, nor was I a distant relative. Her brother was me. I had shared every moment of joy and heartache with her. I was removed off her wedding guest list, nevertheless. I felt a chilling surge of incredulity. My first thought was to chuckle, but as I continued to look at the message, my chest constricted. This must have been an error. Emily would never harm me in this manner. In search of a rational answer, I took up the phone and dialed my mother. My stomach turned when she answered on the second ring in her typically cheerful voice. "Hello, my love. What is going on?" Small chat was a waste of time for me. "Emily just sent me a message. I'm not on the finalized guest list," she says. A pause occurred. It's the sort that validates your darkest concerns, not the casual kind that makes someone pause for a moment. "Oh, sweetheart." "Mom," she began, slipping into the condescending tone she employed whenever she felt I was being irrational. "This is only a wedding. This shouldn't be a huge problem. Only a wedding. I'm her brother, Mom." My voice was eerily serene as I spoke. How come my own sister's wedding isn't inviting me? The list has to be small. "As if that made sense," she said. "Weddings are costly. She probably assumed you wouldn't mind." "I don't mind." As I assimilated what she had said, my thoughts raced. "I've supported Emily through it all, Mom. I've sacrificed everything for her. I'm no longer significant enough to attend her wedding, my dear." She let out a sigh, obviously frustrated. "You're going overboard. It's only one day." However, it wasn't a single day. It represented all that I had done for her, tossed aside as if it had no significance. I didn't continue to debate. I anticipated this outcome. I would become furious. Mom would downplay it. After the wedding, Emily would offer a pathetic apology, and I would be expected to overlook it and go on. Not now. I was done when something within of me snapped. I wasn't going to stay and act like everything was all right if I wasn't deserving of an invitation. Without speaking another word, I hung up and just looked at my phone. I was going to be somewhere much better if I wasn't attending Emily's wedding. I took out my laptop and began looking for flights. I was planning more than simply a vacation. It was a declaration. I was worthy of better. I was on the verge of giving myself that. In less than an hour. With spa services, unlimited margaritas, and a room that shouted you made the correct choice, I had reserved a week-long vacation at a 5-star resort in the Caribbean ocean views. I had already boarded a plane in first class sipping champagne when the wedding weekend arrived. I made sure to capture the occasion with a description that included a nicely framed photo of myself with my legs out and a drink in hand. I guess I was left off of the guest list. However, I believe I will live. The responses came very instantly. My aunt, who is the sole reasonable member of the family, remarked on my cousin's laughing emojis. "Well done. I wish I could have joined you there." The finest response, however, my mother gave it to me. "Where is this really the reason you're missing your sister's wedding? It's petty of you." Petty. Oh, I had only just begun. I replied by sending a beach shot. There's white sand, pristine ocean, and no worries at all. Apologies. Too busy being too dramatic. Have fun at the wedding. After that, I switched off my phone and let the sea breeze to erase any residual remorse. I was prioritizing me for once. And it was amazing. I didn't turn around, not once. I sensed it as soon as I touched down in the Caribbean. The relief from the burden of my family's foolishness. The sound of waves breaking on the coast and the salty ocean wind touched my skin. It seemed as if nature herself was telling me that I had made the correct decision. I had freedom. Outside the airport, a beautiful black SUV with bottled water in the back seat and chilled towels was waiting for me. I gazed out at the infinite expanse of blue ocean as the driver sped along the shoreline, the sun gleaming off the water like 1,000 little diamonds. Yes, this was far more enjoyable than feigning happiness while attending a wedding when I wasn't even invited to the resort. Unbelievable. The sort of location you assume isn't real when you see it on those Instagram travel sites. Before I had even checked into the room, they welcomed me with a refreshing cocktail in the open-air lobby, which was framed by pom-poms. I was astounded by the floor-to-ceiling windows that led to a private terrace overlooking the ocean. A king-sized bed that seemed capable of engulfing me. What's the best part, quiet? No guilt trips, no family conflict. Just tranquilly. I felt the warm wind caress my face as I stepped out onto the balcony after dropping my baggage. I inhaled deeply and let the tension to release. Then, to ensure that the universe was aware that I was doing well, I took a photo of the scenery, palms swinging in the wind, white sand, and glistening ocean. One door shuts, and another opens ideally to a suite on the beach with endless margaritas. I grinned when I saw the comments come in after hitting the post button. "Jake's cousin. Where are you and Lisa, dude? All right, you're just being ostentatious now. My college buddy, dude. Next time, invite me." This appears to be crazy. The finest part, though. Emily came upon the post. Oh, that was the moment I lived for. While she was worrying about her picture-perfect wedding, I saw her sitting in the bridal suite sipping champagne, looking through Instagram and witnessing me live my best life. Excellent. Give her a look. The following day was blissful. The sound of waves awoke me. I had a coffee that tasted like paradise in the morning while relaxing on the balcony, and I ordered room service that was better than any wedding buffet. I was spread out beside the infinity pool by midday. One hand a drink and no worries whatsoever. My phone wasn't being ignored. That's right. I simply showed selective disinterest. I periodically checked Instagram just to appreciate the likes and comments that were pouring in about my vacation. The laughing emoticons and the remarks that made me wish I was there. They were fuel, but until something changed, my family's warnings were disregarded. It was close to twilight when my phone began to ring. I initially disregarded it. When the sensations continued, I assumed it was simply more people responding to my articles. I looked at the display. Mom's calls were missed. Jake texted. Emily left a voicemail. Uncle Rob, too. I arched an eyebrow. Now what? I quickly glanced through my phone's messages after unlocking it, but Jake's text was the one that made me take notice. You won't believe what just occurred, bro. Well, I was interested now. As I scanned through the texts, a gradual smile appeared on my face with each new message. The groom left. Yes, during the reception you read correctly. Emily and her fiancé apparently got into a heated dispute in front of everyone, and the man simply left the event walking away. Whispering was going on among the guests. Grandma was sobbing, and the venue staff was rushing about. "Jake, you escaped a bullet, dude. Mom, give me a call. A family emergency has arisen. Please, Emily, you are necessary to me." Oh no, I mattered. I took a sip of my drink, relaxed in my lounge chair, and let the news to sink in. The person blowing up my phone was Emily, who had excluded me from her wedding. I'm desperate to come clean up the mess. I apologize. I didn't say it to anyone in particular. I'm enjoying my reactions a bit too much. I quickly composed a reply to Emily. I hope the wedding was enjoyable. Right now I'm a little busy. Have fun. I banned her number after that. My mother's too were blocked. I had no intention of being pulled back into the turmoil. Not now. They could now accept the decision they had taken. I wasn't going to allow them to destroy the fact that I was in paradise. I was still having the time of my life 2 days later. Sand, sun, and drinks. Spa services in the morning. 5-star meals and poolside afternoon siesta. That caused me to reevaluate everything I had previously consumed. Then I received another text, this time from my cousin Melissa. "All right, I understand your anger. You have every right to be honest. However, you must hear this. Give me a call. It's going to be fantastic." One of the few sensible family members was Melissa. I reasoned that if she was contacting me, it would likely be worthwhile to listen. I gave her a call back regarding the time. Hearing the first ring, she said. Her voice was excited, and I could hear it. "Are you seated?" I looked about at the icy cocktail in my hand, the ocean in front of me, and my covered cabana. "Yes," I smirked and said, "Whatever it is, I believe I'm in a good position." After the groom left, Melissa wasted no time. Emily snapped. Her voice was filled with barely suppressed laughter as she spoke. "I'm not referring about a few tears. I'm shouting, throwing things, having a complete breakdown. Bridesmaids sobbing uncontrollably." I arched an eyebrow. "Whoa. All right, but hold on, things will improve." Melissa went on, her voice almost brimming with excitement. "Lisa, too. And I assure you that if you had been present, this would not have occurred." My drink almost suffocated me. "What, yes?" Melissa laughed. "You are the only one who has ever been able to calm Emily down," she added, "and you would have prevented her from going insane if you had been around." I leaned back and laughed till my gut ached. How ironic. I wiped away my tears and continued, "Let me get this straight. I wasn't significant enough, therefore they didn't invite me. However, since I wasn't present to correct it, they are now accusing me. Basically." Melissa laughed as she spoke, and her mother supported her. Grandma, however, added something after that. She remarked, I bit my lip to contain my laughter while I waited. Melissa went on, hardly controlling herself, adding that she wouldn't be wearing her bridal gown alone now if Emily had treated her family properly. I was going to die. That is exactly what Grandma said. I gasped, having trouble breathing. Yes, poetic justice. Yet the icing on the cake, Emily's efforts to keep the wedding together. Complete failure. Nothing to do with her was desired by the groom's family. She was left to clean up the mess when they packed up and went after the drama, both literally and metaphorically. Mom called the groom's relatives in an attempt to repair the damage. However, his mom, she wasn't having it, I see. Now this is your mess. She hung up after saying that. Even if I tried, I couldn't make this stuff up. I was beaming from ear to ear by the time I got off the phone with Melissa. The finest aspect, I didn't give a damn. They were drowning in the fallout after cutting me out of their life and assuming they would always be there to clean up their mess. And me, I was by the sea drinking drinks, living the kind of life they believed I was not worthy of. How is Emily doing now? I inquired, just out of curiosity. Melissa continued to cry and blame everyone but herself. It's over, let's face it, but the last I heard she was attempting to come up with a backup plan. I wish you luck in your endeavor. Taking another sip, I mumbled. Then it dawned on me. I didn't give a damn. I was free of their responsibilities for the first time in years. I didn't fix families. I was myself. And it was so satisfying. I held out my glass, observing the orange and pink hues of the sky as the sun sets, and expressed no remorse in a whisper. The sound of waves gently lapping against the coast roused me up. My suite's translucent drapes let in the early morning sun, which cast a warm, golden warmth over the space. I lay there for a while, allowing the peace to take me. No guilt, no urgent texts, no buzzing phone. Me, the sea, and the freedom I never knew I'd been longing for. My muscles were delightfully weary following days of relaxing by the pool, strolling down the shore, and enjoying spa treatments that had all but eliminated my tension, so I stretched leisurely. I was reminded that breakfast was calling by the rumbling in my tummy. I looked at the time. 8:00 a.m. There's still time for one more leisurely morning before choosing whether to relax under a palm tree or enjoy a catamaran tour for the day. It was a nice life. Out of habit, I reached for my phone and saw it. 14 voicemails and 27 missed calls. Many texts. Even after half of my family has been blocked. They had figured out how to break through unidentified numbers. I hadn't spoken to my friends in years, a few neighbors even. Without reading a single message, I let out a sigh and put the phone down. Not right now. I murmured, got to my feet, stretched, and went out onto the balcony. In front of me, the water extended indefinitely, waves softly washing up on the beach. I inhaled deeply, allowing the briny air to fill my lungs, keeping me rooted in the here and now. They had time to wait. As the sun warmed my skin, I savored every bite of the smoothest coffee I'd ever tasted, fluffy pancakes and tropical fruit that I had ordered for breakfast. I couldn't help but giggle when I eventually gave in to my curiosity and started reading the texts. Mom, please come home and quit being such a kid. Emily is devastated. Emily, it's unbelievable that you're treating me like Way. You are necessary to me. Give us a call, please. Most likely unknown. Lisa, aunt. This must be resolved by the family before it's too late. How ironic. When they were organizing the wedding, they hadn't required me. Now, however, now that everything had fallen apart around them, I was their only hope. Unfortunately. I mumbled to myself as I erased each message individually, but I paused at one message. Melissa. All right. Although I don't blame you, I thought I'd let you know that you're neglecting everyone. When you return, Mom is attempting to set up a family gathering. I just wanted to let you know. I shook my head and snorted. A family gathering. Naturally. They most likely anticipated that I would waltz back in, hear their pathetic excuses, and as usual, brush everything under the rug. This version of myself, the one who had at last experienced serenity, was unknown to them. He would not return. I typed Melissa a brief response. I appreciate the caution, but I'm not going. She responded very immediately. Hold on. What precisely do you mean by what I said? I'm extending my trip, I said. For the wedding, they wanted me out of their life. They can now handle the fallout without my help. Through the screen, I nearly saw her mouth drop. She mailed it back a minute later. It's iconic. When you return, whenever that may be, tell me everything. Lol. I put my phone down and smiled. The simplest thing I'd ever done was to extend my stay. I reserved a second week at the resort in a matter of minutes. I wasn't prepared to return. Not to the incessant loop of being the family fixer, the mess, or the guilt. I was prioritizing myself for once, and it felt fantastic. In the greatest conceivable manner, the following few days blended together. Mornings were spent taking long walks on the beach where the sand felt warm between my toes and the waves caressed my feet. They either slept in hammocks with a good book in the evenings or spent their afternoons by the pool. Dinners on the water at sunset were. It was fresh fish. The ocean was the only talk I needed, and the wine was wonderfully cold. No drama, no worry, just tranquilly. However, the real world will eventually catch up with paradise. I made the error of turning my phone back on a week later. It was crazy how many alerts there were. Voicemails and missed calls have increased, additional texts. But among the confusion, I saw one message. Melissa. All right, you will adore this. When you have time, give me a call. After a brief moment of hesitation, I dialed her phone. She picked up on the first ring just in time. Her enthusiasm was evident in her voice. Have you returned to reality? Or are you still in paradise? Are you still in paradise? I smiled as I stretched out on the balcony, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin. But whatever this is, I thought it's worth listening to. Yes, it is, I assure you. Melissa did not let me down. It didn't end with Emily's breakdown. After the wedding collapsed, she started laughing uncontrollably. Mom and Aunt Lisa attempted to repair the damage. In an attempt to patch things up, they phoned the groom's family, but I arched an eyebrow. However, what the mother of the groom was not amused. She told them straight up, "Now this is your mess. We're finished." I almost spat my drink out. "Hold on, really? Oh, it gets better," Melissa remarked, her laughter evident in her voice. Emily made an effort to mend things on her own. He blocked her, even though she phoned him several times. I was unable to resist. I burst out laughing. What is Emily up to now? Melissa let out a sigh and softened her tone while continuing to place the blame on everyone but herself. She believes that Granny isn't helping and that the universe is punishing her. I blinked. What did Grandma do, I wonder? Melissa chuckled quietly and replied, "Oh." Grandma reminded her that she wouldn't be standing here by herself in her bridal gown if she had treated her family properly. Before I dropped my drink, I had to put it down. Did Grandma say that? Yes, in full view of everyone. Good heavens, I adored that woman. Here's the worst part, though. In fact, Mom had persuaded herself that I was the missing component in this whole situation. She was telling everybody who would listen that I would have helped Emily relax if I had been present, prevented the groom from departing, and miraculously averted the whole catastrophe. I'm still being blamed, I inquired. Even if I was aware of the solution beforehand, Melissa answered, "Oh yeah, but it's amusing, you know. I believe they realize deep down that they are to blame for this. They just refuse to acknowledge it." I took a seat back and listened to her comments. They were aware. They did, of course. However, accepting responsibility and acknowledging it wasn't part of the family playbook. Let them continue to blame me, I said, as if a burden had been lifted. I will no longer bear their trash. I had changed by the time I returned home. Lighter, more liberated. I was free of the guilt that had previously bound me. The me who had always sacrificed everything to solve their issues. He would not return. It was different when I entered my flat, as though I were beginning a new phase of my life, one in which I was in charge, but just in case the message wasn't understood by them. On my final night at the resort, I shared a picture of the sunset. Shades of pink and orange decorated the sky. It seemed like a promise of brighter times to come. The caption, "No regrets, the best choice I've ever made." After that, I switched off my phone. They desired a life devoid of me. All right. I was finally living a life where I mattered so they could take it. And I had no intention of sacrificing that for anything.